Hi everyone, my name is Emily Pope, and today I'm going to be presenting on organizational learning. Here's a brief overview of what I'll be covering in this presentation. First, I'll discuss how organizational learning fits into the leadership theory timeline. Second, the causes or reasons that organizational change was needed. Third, Peter Senge, who's the main theorist associated with this construct. Fourth, what exactly organizational learning is. Fifth, a novel called The Fifth Discipline, The Art of Practice of the Learning Organization, which was written by Peter Senge. Sixth, the 5 disciplines themselves. Seventh, the strengths and weaknesses associated with this construct. And finally, present and future implications. So I thought it would be beneficial to discuss where organizational learning fits within the timeline of common leadership theories. While I provide some information here about the progression towards the knowledge era, more information will be given throughout the rest of the presentation. But as we've previously learned, the past was constructed by an industrial society and path goal leadership. The machine has always been the focus of production rather than the individual or group of people. In the past, there was always a common belief that we could determine an outcome for every course of action, or at least predict one. And the typical theme during this era was a formal authority system with consistent task-oriented work. However, if you fast forward 20 years, there was a time between the industrial society and the present, or the knowledge era, and I like to consider this time period progression towards the knowledge era. A large focus of this time was transformational leadership, which is a huge factor in the creation and development of organizational learning. A transformational leader cultivates a higher purpose or calling in followers, and these followers then, who are performing a more meaningful type of work, appreciate the leader for their heightened level of commitment. From this individualized relationship came the idea that if all the employees' needs and demands were tailored to, there'd be a higher degree of motivation, drive, and job satisfaction among employees. Currently, we're in a knowledge era. So now the human mind is the focus of production, and there's a heightened need for quick adaptation to change. And a huge difference between the present and the industrial society is the discovery that there may not always be a specific causal link to every problem, and we can't predict what these links are. Finally, the workplaces are realizing that by having an understanding of individual strengths, productivity is then in turn more effective and efficient. So now that we have some historical context, I'm going to discuss the whole reason that organizational changes were needed. As I mentioned just a minute ago, there's been a huge shift in mindset regarding cause and effect relationships since the scientific era. A large reason for facilitating organizational change was to adapt to these shifting mindsets and understand that diversity in a workplace can really allow for so many more potential hypotheses, predictions, solutions, and pathways even to solving one given problem. Additionally, people began to consider the capacity that every individual has to learn. So throughout any given organization, every individual has their set job, list of tasks, and responsibilities that they are designated to complete. Previously, most people have accepted these tasks as their duty and haven't really aimed to learn more, complete more, or receive more. But as people's beliefs shifted from the mechanistic era to the knowledge era, employees and organizations began to focus more on efficient and effective work, therefore allowing more mental capacity to learn more and do more. This in turn led to an increased interest in accelerated learning, which includes mind mapping, reflection, and creativity all throughout the 1980s and 1990s. It's no question that the ability to understand and appreciate differences in one another has been a huge issue worldwide throughout the past. However, along with the knowledge era came a common belief that valuing one another, specifically others' thoughts and ideas, could lead to a more productive workplace. This then, in turn, creates better human relationships, work friendships, networking opportunities, and just in general, work communities. My next point perhaps relates closest to the goals we emphasize in our profession, which is having an awareness of the total self. It is finally understood that if you allow yourself time to take care of your mental, physical, and emotional health, that you will be more productive and effective in the workplace. The movement of ensuring exercise, diet, adequate sleep, and mental health began at the end of the mechanistic era, specifically when more individuals understood how overall better health can have an impact on your actual mental function. The end of the scientific era was the start of thinking out of the box workshops. Increased research has been done regarding the link between increased capacities for learning and creativity, specifically that higher levels of creativity allowed for a more broader learning capacity. Creative learning taught individuals to take in information that they would normally discard or ignore, which was a huge push in the direction of the knowledge era. So this all matters because along with these shifts in eras came a huge shift in overall workplace styles. The main theorist associated with organizational learning is a man named Peter Senge. Senge received his bachelor's degree in engineering from Stanford University. He went on to receive his master's degree in social systems modeling from MIT, followed by his PhD in management, also from MIT. He currently works as a senior lecturer at the Sloan School of Management, which is at MIT also, and he's the founding chair of the Society of Organizational Learning. He is the author of The Fifth Discipline, The Art and Practice of the Learning Organization, which I'll discuss further in detail in an upcoming slide and refer to all throughout this presentation. He's also co-wrote a handful of books. It's safe to say that this man is your go-to guy for anything organizational learning related. So now that you have some historical context and background information about organizational learning, I think it's time to address exactly what it is. Peter Senge and his colleagues refer to organizational learning as a place where people continually expand their capacity to produce results that they truly desire, where new and expansive patterns of thinking are nurtured, and where people are continually learning how to learn. Senge also emphasizes the fact that real learning gets to the heart of what it is to be human. For a learning organization, the drive to learn should not just be enough to survive, but rather to enhance the capacity to create more. Additionally, learning organizations have been based on 3 common statements. The first is that learning is as natural as breathing. The second is that learning should be embedded as a part of an organization's culture. And the third is that continuous adaptation and improvement can only happen through continuous learning. In conclusion, the main point of organizational learning is that the learning process should be social and participative, including collaboration and the constant use of shared tools. So here's a little bit of information regarding the 5th discipline, the art and practice of the learning organization, written by Peter Senge. Originally written in 1990, this book serves as a resource for anyone seeking information about organizational learning. This piece examines the 5 core disciplines of a learning organization, how to navigate change within a learning organization, and then how each individual can change their mindset to help facilitate growth within a workplace. While this was a huge part of this project, I highly recommend this to anyone looking to understand more about workplace dynamic and how to facilitate changes, as it serves as a great resource. So now we're going to discuss in more detail the 5 disciplines of a learning organization. This slide will provide you with an overview of each and how they all fit together, and then I'll discuss each particular discipline in greater detail in the upcoming slides. The first discipline is personal mastery. This includes constant clarification, deepening of personal visions, focusing and refocusing energies, developing patience, and seeing reality objectively. The second discipline is mental models. This includes addressing subjective images, ingrained assumptions, generalizations, and stories. If you remember back to one of my first slides, I mentioned that one of the main reasons learning organizations were changing was to gain a deeper appreciation for differing perspectives. Mental models is the discipline that addresses this particular need for change. The third discipline is building a shared vision. Best way to summarize this discipline in one word is collaboration. By all coming together to combine personal visions, the team will be able to work towards the common goal more effectively. The fourth discipline is team learning. Team learning is similar to building a shared vision, but it rather teaches the team action steps towards achieving a common goal. And finally, the 5th discipline is systems thinking. This discipline was actually added to the list later than the other 4. It's still being studied actually in great detail today. Systems thinking is the understanding that everything within an organization is interrelated, and you have to address each part while considering the implications that it may have on the whole. So the first discipline is personal mastery. In the 5th discipline, Senge includes a quote from Bill O'Brien, who's a former professional at the Hanover Insurance Company. Bill stated that people enter businesses as bright, well-educated, high-energy people, full of energy and desire to make a difference. By the time they are 30, a few are on the fast track, and the rest put in their time to do what matters to them on the weekend. They lose their sense of commitment, sense of mission, and excitement with which they started their careers. It should be clear that this is a huge, very common problem in workplaces worldwide. We could probably all think of someone who lives their life in this manner. Personal mastery starts with clarifying the things that really matter to us and living our life to our highest aspirations. Organizations can only learn through individuals who learn. However, it's important to note that individual learning does not always guarantee organizational learning. People who live with a high degree of personal mastery live in continual learning mode. And it goes beyond competence and skill and even beyond spiritual unfolding, but it requires all of these things. Personal mastery, in conclusion, means approaching one's life as a creative work and living life from a creative versus a reactive viewpoint. The next discipline is mental models. Most of the time, we're not aware of our own mental models and how they can influence our everyday behavior. The first step in influencing these mental models is through basically turning the mirror inward. By having the ability to carry on what is referred to as a learningful conversation, people learn to expose their own ideas while making these ideas open to the opinion and influence of others, which for many people can be a hard thing to do. Lack of this discipline is the reason that some of the best ideas fail. Whether it's preconceived notions or assumptions about an individual and/or their ideas, they're either many times quickly shut down or the individual doesn't have faith in themselves to present the idea. New insights fail to get put into practice very often because they conflict with either a deeply held internal image of how the world works or just anything that may limit us to our familiar way of thinking and acting. Therefore, the discipline of managing mental models includes surfacing, testing, and improving our internal pictures of how the world works, which then promises to be a major breakthrough for building learning organizations. The third discipline is building a shared vision. Building a shared vision includes the process of binding people together around a common identity. This includes having a genuine vision, one that people work towards not because they have to, because they want to. Many companies struggle or fail because all individuals are forced to work towards a leader or manager's vision, but not a collective vision. The main purpose of building a shared vision is creating genuine commitment and enrollment among all members, rather than just compliance of the employees. Once this is mastered, a leader can understand the counterproductiveness of trying to dictate a vision, which in turn can have profound impacts on the overall learning organization. The fourth discipline is team learning. This is the need to develop capacities for coordinated action. This discipline emphasizes that team learning starts with dialogue and eliminating assumptions of one another, therefore creating a workplace of thinking together. Furthermore, this discipline includes understanding the patterns of interaction that determine how well a team can actually work together. So, for example, if defensiveness goes unaddressed as a pattern of interaction among some or all members, this characteristic can undermine and most likely inhibit the learning process. Once it's addressed, however, the learning process can continue in a much more effective manner. In the book, Senge states that this is where the rubber meets the road, so unless a team can learn together, the organization cannot learn as a whole. Ideally, an effective team has most, if not all, of the following characteristics, which are a clear and elevating goal, a results-driven structure, competent team members, a unified commitment, a collaborative climate, standards of excellence, external support and recognition, and principled leadership. The fifth discipline is systems thinking. This discipline is fifth for a reason. It integrates and fuses together the rest of the disciplines into a coherent body of theory and practice, but it also relies on the other four. Building a shared vision fosters a commitment to the long term. Mental models focus on the openness needed to see past the present time and change our thinking to gear our actions towards the future. Team learning develops skills among a group that only functions when the individuality is removed. And finally, personal mastery fosters the individual motivation to continually learn and develop in hopes of creating a better world. There are 11 laws that Senge states that systems thinking encompasses. They are that today's problems come from yesterday's solutions. The harder you push, the harder system pushes you back. Behavior grows better before it grows worse. The easy way out usually leads back in. The cure can be worse than the disease. Faster is slower. Cause and effect are not closely related in time and space. Small changes can produce big results, but the areas of highest leverage are often the least obvious. You can have your cake and eat it too, but not at once. Dividing an elephant in half does not produce two small elephants, and there is no blame. In conclusion, systems thinking is the idea that there is no outside, rather that the cause of all your problems are part of a single system. There are various strengths and weaknesses associated with organizational learning. Hopefully, various strengths were evident throughout this presentation. A learning organization environment can make a failing business completely flip, and it can also provide a very competitive advantage. It reinstills a desire for work, change, and improvement within employees. And perhaps one of the most important strengths of this concept is that organizations no longer have to rely on passive processes. The learning organization actively promotes, facilitates, and rewards collective learning. Other strengths include, but aren't limited to, better access to resources, better ability to respond to external pressure, engaging in an ongoing pace of change, and improving the corporate image by becoming people-oriented. Along with any sets of strengths usually comes weaknesses. Learning organizations are no exception. Perhaps the largest weakness of learning organizations are that in any situation, people are hesitant towards change. So completely shifting a workplace to a learning organization requires an unusual degree of commitment because it basically insists that a large number of people completely change the way they think and act. There's a natural resistance to this, many times even at an unconscious level. On top of that, people feel threatened. With an ever-changing workplace environment, it's essential to ensure job security to the employees. Finally, there's usually setbacks throughout this transitioning process. Whether it's due to the workplace dynamic itself or outside factors, setbacks have the ability to make individuals shut down and desire to return to old processes. It is essential in this environment to be persistent and continue moving forward, as the end goal will be much more beneficial than returning to old familiar ways of work. Two examples of successful learning organizations are the Department of Defense and a program called ROCA, which is discussed in the fifth discipline. The Department of Defense made its transition to a learning organization during the summer of 2016, although it's continually growing and expanding on the main disciplines. Prickett discusses that the Department of Defense was struggling to instill motivation and drive within its members before this transformation occurred. However, after various changes were implemented, there's been a steady increase in continued improvement and self-development among all the members involved. Similarly, a program called ROCA, which is based out of Boston, has seen profound improvements since adopting the learning organization pattern. ROCA functions to provide a safe and healthy community for young people who are primarily immigrants. When welcoming individuals into this organization, the learning organization concept is evident from the beginning, therefore influencing the way that members act and learn and contribute to the group. Because it has such a high degree of learning organization integrated into it, it's very beneficial because it sets a high expectation and standard of its members and therefore can produce extraordinary results. Future implications and research should focus on how certain groups best adapt to change. Each company has a unique, individualized dynamic in some way. With a deeper understanding of these individualized dynamics, the transition process to a learning organization can be simplified and tailored to each company's specific needs. This would essentially make the transition process more efficient and hopefully reduce the degree to which people are hesitant towards change. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.